For 60 years, the Queen's reign has been recorded not only by news cameras, but also in thousands of home movies shot by members of the public. Many of these films have remained unseen for decades, lying in archives or hidden away in drawers and attics. Put together, these amateur movies provide a unique and often surprising portrait of Britain and our Queen.
She was the best-looking girl I've seen in all my years.
In this first of two programmes, we look at some memorable royal encounters.
When the Queen visits you, it is something special, but it becomes a cherished memory.
We'll meet the people whose brush with royalty was caught on film.
It was sheer excitement and disbelief, and I just remember thinking, oh my goodness.
I used to say to the other kids at school, the Queen's been at my house.
And we'll hear from the home movie makers themselves about the historic images they recorded.
She was the Queen of our country. I was going to see her.
The 23rd of March 2012. It's the second day of the Diamond Jubilee Tour, and the streets of Manchester are lined with well-wishers, all hoping for a glimpse of the Queen and Prince Philip. It's also a big day for John Canning and his fiancée Frances, who are getting married in Manchester Town Hall. When he found out that the Queen was due to visit on the day of their wedding, John wrote to Buckingham Palace to see if the Queen would care to join the guest list.
Because us Northerners were friendly folk, I just thought I'd write a letter to wish her all the best on the Jubilee and hope you have a wonderful time in Manchester. I just said, if you get any time, feel free to knock on. And, you know, we can always find a couple of chairs, you know, it's like one of them.
But as the Cannings exchanged their vows, little did they know that behind the scenes, palace officials had arranged for the Queen to pay them a surprise visit.
Went to the service, everything was great, everything went according to plan, everybody was lovely. And then a lady from the police force came in and said the Queen would like to say hello. And they asked us how we'd feel about that, and obviously it was a straightforward, oh yes.
It was,
wasn't it? It was
I was like... Oh.
But Frances had a panic attack because she didn't know how to curtsy properly. But then again, who does?
I only had 5 minutes to try and practice it, and I thought, oh God, I hope I do this right. But it was like the longest wait of my life. I felt like it was forever because not everybody gets to meet the Queen of England.
Luckily for the Cannings, their royal appointment was filmed on a friend's mobile phone.
Well, she put you at ease straight away, didn't she?
I think she knew I was really nervous,
I think
and
that
she
was...
held my hand. If I did shake it, because I was really nervous. Yeah. She just said, you look lovely, and I wish you and John all the best on your wedding day and for the future. And it's been really nice to be able to meet you. And I said it's been an honour to meet you. Philip mentioned about our honeymoon and about Italy, and obviously they knew all about that. Just the feeling that they actually knew about the both of us was nice.
How many people have ever had a Queen coming to their wedding? It is something that doesn't happen. That's got to be the ultimate fairy tale for me.
Long before the advent of mobile phones, previous generations had had their moment of meeting the Queen captured on video or film. Home movie enthusiasts have sought to record footage of the monarch ever since she came to the throne in 1952, and a royal visit was the perfect opportunity.
Elizabeth really brought in the idea of the notion that you have to see the royal. The royal has to travel. It's their job to be out there meeting the people. Winston Churchill said that you couldn't have found a film star to do the Queen's role better, and that was exactly what she was. She was to them their film star.
Back then, there were no guarantees that you were going to be able to pick up some coverage of a royal visit. So if you wanted to see a royal, you really had to make the effort and go out there and stand there for hours. And they did in their thousands. It was huge news. She was glamorous, she was gorgeous, everyone wanted to see her.
Owning a piece of footage that you've shot of the Queen is a fantastic thing to have because it reminds you of the day that she came and the excitement that there was when she arrived in your town. It's about the community that she visited. It's about the filmmaker who took the film. And it really gives a snapshot of British life over the decades that she's been in power.
In the 1950s, the Queen's royal visits brought her closer to her subjects than any monarch had ever been before. She was determined to see for herself how Britain was changing. It wasn't unheard of for the Queen to call in on a local family for a cup of tea and a tour around their home. When she visited a house in Crawley, Newtown in 1958, neighbour Shirley Shearsmith, then 24, set out to record the visit on her cine camera.
I was so excited that I thought that the Queen was actually going to be walking down this path so close, and I would actually have the opportunity of seeing her. I realised that although we had a high garden wall, that I would have a wonderful view of the Queen walking down the path to this house, if only I could see over the wall. So I realised that if we took the kitchen table down to the bottom, we could stand on that and then see the Queen go past. Eventually, the cavalcade arrived of all these cars, and the Queen got out. And it was so exciting, you know. There was this lovely, beautiful lady and her handsome husband. It was such a rare opportunity to be so close.
The Queen calls at the home of Mr. and Mrs. Hammond and their family, typical of the people who live in Britain's new towns.
It was the topic of conversation for days afterwards. The fact that she had bothered to come to where we were living made us feel that it was such a wonderful occasion and one we would never, ever forget.
But this wasn't the first time the Queen had visited an ordinary working-class home. A year earlier, it had been the turn of a family in Hull. The local police force decided to make a home movie to record the royal visit, even adding their own commentary.
And from the dock, the royal procession was to travel north to the Bilton Grange housing estate, where the Queen and the Duke paid a surprise call upon the residents of a council house.
Mike Inglis was only 2 years old when the Queen came round for tea. His late parents would tell stories of that day for years to come. 5 decades on, Mike returns to his childhood home with his Auntie Enid.
50 years, eh? Yeah, there it is.
So where we're stood now is that photograph. It has changed a bit.
It has. Same privet, though. Well, it does bring back a lot of memories. We've had some good times here, you know. In those days, a rent collector used to go around collecting the rents. And he came to my sister's house and he said that the Queen's visit, and they said that they're going to pick a house and it could be yours.
My mother literally cleaned the house from top to bottom. Every single room. It was spotless, absolutely spotless. She baked some buns for the Queen, which were actually out on a plate.
There was the crowds all building up, all around. You know, all the kids were running up here. Oh, it was wonderful. It was wonderful. And we stood on the edge here, on this flag edge, and all of a sudden they come round the corner and they started to slow down. So we just said, "Oh, slowing down."
You can see the Queen walking up to us, just stood near the front door there now. Look of absolute shock on Auntie Enid's face.
I couldn't get over her complexion. It was wonderful. She was lovely.
Walked all around the house, upstairs, downstairs, walked through into the kitchen. There was a sink with a curtain around it. Prince Philip walked in and looked underneath the sink, pulled the curtain. I don't know what he was expecting to find under there, but there was nothing under there except the drain. It's a special thing to happen to you, to have the Queen visit your house. Nobody else's. She's come to your house. I used to say to the other kids at school, the Queen's been at my house.
Yeah, yes.
Mike wasn't the only child visited by the Queen that day. Newlands, a local children's home, was also preparing to receive the royal guests.
It was a very, very special day. I was only 7, my sister was only 8. As far as we knew, the Queen was only coming to see us, nobody else. And we were all given new clothes, which consisted of 2 pairs of white socks, summer dresses, a nice cardigan. But we weren't allowed to wear them until the actual day the Queen came. And we were actually given flags to wave for the Queen. And then there were material ones, there weren't these plastic things that you get nowadays. There were proper flags, you know.
As well as bringing in proper flags, the home also invested in a new throne in preparation for Her Majesty's visit.
We had to have a new toilet seat in the staff room in case she wanted to use it. So we had a royal seat from then on.
I did get a glimpse of her and she was beautiful. Yeah, she was beautiful, wasn't she?
I was disappointed in a way, because I thought she'd have a tiara on and a big ball gown.
But only one child from the home would get to speak to the Queen, and that honour fell to Anton Nielsen. Anton had another reason to be excited that day. His mother would be visiting the home too.
I said to him, Anton, it's your great day. Meaning, of course, the Queen was coming. He says, yes, my mum's coming.
And from these children, there were gifts for Prince Charles and Princess Anne.
He was really looking forward to his mum coming. Nothing to do with the Queen, and that's all they wanted was kids. They don't ask for much, only a penn'orth of love.
Anton was just one of many children selected to meet the Queen over the years. As these pictures show, children have always had a big role to play in royal visits.
The Queen enjoys meeting children. And if they're really lucky, they might have managed to give her a posy, they might have shaken her hand, they might have exchanged a word or two. It's a big deal.
And for the Queen, a bouquet.
They're a bit in awe when they first meet the Queen, but she has the capability and the knack of really relaxing them within a few seconds. It's a big moment for that child.
No child could ever forget the day the Queen came to visit their school. For one day, normal timetables and classes are put to one side, and every child is on their best behaviour, all hoping that they might get to meet the Queen. Almost exactly 50 years ago, on the 25th of May 1962, it was the turn of Solihull School to be gripped by royal fever. Today, English teacher Dennis Tomlin still remembers the great sense of pride brought by the Queen's visit.
The Royal Standard flew over school that day. For 20 minutes, Solihull School becomes the ostensible centre of the British Empire and Commonwealth. It always amazes me about the Queen, how interested and amused she is on these public occasions. She still manages to give the impression that this is a really special occasion for her, as well as those who are admiring her.
This remarkable footage was shot by the pupils themselves. Filming the Queen's visit was to be one of the school's Cine Club's first assignments. 18-year-old Tony Thompson even decided to climb on the roof of the headmaster's office to get a bird's-eye view.
In terms of finding the best positions, we needed clear view. The headmaster's office was a prime position for getting, not quite aerial, but certainly a well-elevated view of what was going on. And apparently the headmaster said to the Cine Club, you know, who the heck was that up on the roof? Well, that was me. I think when the Queen visits you, it is something special. It's something you remember, it becomes a cherished memory.
Simon Billing also has special memories of the day the Queen came to Solihull School. He was chosen to help her in the planting of a tree to commemorate her visit. Simon now lives in Canada. He's grown a bit since 1962, and so, of course, has the tree.
I guess that's the tree. It's 50 years ago, so it's a long time. Strains the old memory, but I was here. I remember fighting in the fields before the ceremony. I actually think I had a detention the afternoon of the day that I had this signal honour. The Queen came from the chapel, escorted by the estimable Mr. Hitchens. Terrifying Mr. Hitchens. I was far more terrified of him than I was of the Queen, who seemed quite small. I was rooted to the spot. We were standing there nervously, and I looked to Derek, the older boy, as she came closer, thinking, yeah, okay, this is it. This is the point at which I have to perform and not screw up. She put one shovelful into the hole, and then she whisked away to her next duty. It's one of those events in your life that's always with you. I'm a great fan of the Queen as an individual. I think she's a marvellous lady.
Still to come on The Queen and I, three sons relive their father's film of the day he played host to the Queen.
I wonder if she remembers the day. It would be nice to ask her, wouldn't it?
And it's a royal trip with a difference for Prince Philip on a visit to a boat museum.
Oh, yes. Oh, my goodness.
Over the decades, the Queen has visited hundreds of offices and factories around Britain. Home movie cameras have captured some of these royal visits forever. One of the best is this film of the Queen's visit to Sheffield from 1954. Her host that day was Billy Ibbison, head of the city's cutlery works.
Billy Ibbison, he made a film when the Queen came to visit the cutlery works. He was the cameraman. He was also part of the party, not only being very reverential to the Queen, but also getting some fantastic shots because he's got such good access to her.
Half a century on, Billy Ibbison's three sons return to Cutler's Hall, the place where their father once entertained royalty. It's the first time they've watched this film since their teens.
It would have been a dream come true from his point of view. It was an opportunity not to be missed anyway.
Television was only in its infancy in those days, so making a film about something was really quite something special. Now, he would have loved the fact that the whole of Sheffield was getting involved and that people were there. And the streets were lined with children particularly, waving flags and being caught up in the sense of occasion. He felt a massive sense of dignity and responsibility and pleasure that he was going to be host, if you like, for the evening reception for the Queen. It's remarkable to think that she'd started doing this at a very, very young age, isn't it? With such grace and charm even then. There's my father, talking to the Queen. I think this is presenting her with the penknife which had her signature engraved on the side, all in gold. He probably would have said to her, now you know, madam, the custom is you must pass over a coin. In order, there we go, there's the coin being passed. Yes.
And they say the Queen never carries money.
He would absolutely love the idea that his films are being looked at 50, 60 years later.
Yes, he would. And the film is in fantastically good condition, and the Queen is still with us and still a wonderful person. Yes. I wonder if she remembers the day. It would be nice to ask her, wouldn't it?
Fast forward to 1979, and the Queen is now a quarter of a century into her reign. It was the turn of Ellesmere Port Boat Museum to welcome the royal couple. Tony and Diane Hurst worked there as volunteers.
I didn't believe it at first, so it was very, very exciting. I mean, no way did I ever think I'd meet the Queen. And of course, we had to keep it secret for a while, didn't we? We weren't able to tell anybody.
This rarely seen home movie footage, shot by a local cinefilm enthusiast, captured the moment Tony and Diane met the Queen.
Well, my heart was pounding as she got closer to us.
Well, there we are at the top corner, shaking hands with the Queen.
Yes. She was very ordinary.
Yeah, she
really.
was. Yeah.
She was.
No sort of airs and graces with her at all.
She was absolutely beautiful. She was just lovely. She's very tiny.
Tony and Diane's daughter, Tanya, was to present the Queen with a floral replica of a traditional water can.
It was sheer excitement and disbelief, and I just remember thinking, oh my goodness, she's coming. And she's walking along the towpath. All us kids were on the side of Gifford, the narrowboat there. And this is where I have to curtsy to her. She's asking me what it was, and she was delighted with it. And she actually carried it round with her, which is very, very unusual, because normally when people give bouquets to her, she just goes, thank you very much, and hands it to the next person. But she didn't. She carried it around with her, and we felt very honoured.
But this was one royal visit which didn't quite go to plan. One of Tony's tasks that day was to provide steps off the barges for the Queen and Prince Philip.
There was one dodgy moment when he got off the boat, and there was this awful...
Whoa, yes.
Oh, my goodness. You don't realise how much he did stumble, really, did you?
They really rocked them steps.
Yes. Yes. Tony might have ended up in the tower.
Prince Philip had clearly enjoyed his trip, and the royal visit left unforgettable memories for one very happy girl.
The next day when I had to go back to school, it was all excitement and disbelief. They didn't believe me until I brought photographs in. It was a bit of a talk of the town, should I say.
Next time on The Queen and I, we look back at the moments the nation came together in celebration of the Queen's reign, as previously unseen home movies bring back treasured memories from Coronation Day.
You just can't explain the euphoria you could not hear.
And the Queen's Silver Jubilee.
I've never seen anybody in the village get together like they did that day.